I'm a receptionist at a design firm in Rotterdam, and last month, an American consultant walked in for his first day. He'd been hired remotely, signed all the paperwork, flew over with his family. Our creative director took one look at his portfolio during the morning meeting and said, "This work is not good. Why did you send us this?" The American's face went red, then white, then he stood up and walked out. Just left. His wife called an hour later asking if he'd been fired. He'd told her the Dutch were the rudest people on earth, and he couldn't work in such a hostile environment. The creative director was genuinely confused because he'd been trying to understand what happened with the application process. That's just how we talk here. My cousin in Amsterdam works at a cafe near the Rijksmuseum. An American woman ordered a cappuccino and asked how her hair looked because she had a date later. My cousin glanced up and said, "It's a bit flat on one side and that color doesn't suit you." The woman's mouth fell open. She demanded to speak to a manager, insisted my cousin be fired for harassment, and wrote a 3-paragraph review online about being attacked by staff. My cousin was trying to help. If someone asks a question here, we answer it honestly. The woman genuinely thought she was being insulted as some kind of targeted cruelty. I once watched an American man at the train station ask a local for directions. The local said, "You're going the wrong way, and you should have checked the app before coming here." The American complained to everyone within earshot that he'd been verbally assaulted by a stranger. He'd asked a question. He got an answer. But because it wasn't wrapped in apologies and encouragement, he took it as a personal attack. Here's what Americans don't understand about the Netherlands. We don't waste time being fake nice. If something's wrong, we say it's wrong. If you ask a question, we give you the real answer, not the one that protects your feelings. To us, that's respect. We're not going to lie to you or dance around the truth. But Americans show up expecting everyone to treat them like fragile children who need constant reassurance. And when we speak to them like adults, they lose their minds completely. I'm a team leader at a tech company in Utrecht. We hired an American developer who seemed capable during the remote interviews. His first week I reviewed his code and told him during our stand-up, "This approach won't work, and the structure is messy. You need to redo it." He went silent for the rest of the meeting. That afternoon, HR called me in because he'd filed a complaint about my aggressive management style and public humiliation. Given him direct feedback in a team meeting, which is completely normal here. Everyone gets feedback the same way. He insisted I should have scheduled a private meeting, prepared him emotionally, and used a compliment sandwich. I had 12 other people to manage. I wasn't going to waste 30 minutes dancing around the truth when, I could just tell him in 15 seconds what needed fixing. My brother manages a gym in The Hague, and an American member asked him if she was making progress on her fitness goals. He looked at her workout logs and said, "No, you're not coming consistently enough, and your form on the weights is wrong." She burst into tears right there in the gym lobby. She told other members my brother had body-shamed her and tried to get his membership consultant license revoked. She directly asked him for an assessment. He gave her one. But she'd expected him to lie and say she was doing great, or to blame her genetics, or to give her some gentle encouragement instead of the factual answer. She wanted fantasy, not information. I worked the front desk at a dental clinic in Eindhoven, and an American patient asked our dentist if her teeth looked healthy. The dentist examined her and said, "You have early gum disease from not flossing, and those back molars will need work soon if you don't change your habits." The woman complained that the dentist was fear-mongering and trying to upsell unnecessary treatments. Left a review saying Dutch dentists are trained to be cruel. The dentist had told her exactly what was happening in her mouth and what would happen if she didn't address it. That's literally his job. But because he didn't soften it with phrases like "it's totally normal" or "don't worry too much," she decided he was personally attacking her. My sister teaches at an international school in Leiden, and she had an American parent-teacher conference that turned into chaos. She told the parents, "Your son isn't doing the homework, his test scores are low, and he disrupts the class. He needs to put in more effort." The father accused her of targeting their child and claimed she was discriminating against Americans. The mother cried and said no teacher had ever spoken to them so harshly. They demanded my sister be removed from teaching their son. She'd given them the exact information they needed to help their child improve, with no editorial spin or emotional padding. They wanted her to blame the curriculum, praise something irrelevant the kid was good at, and suggest he just needed time to adjust. They wanted comfortable lies instead of actionable truth. I'm a waiter at a restaurant in Harlem. An American couple sat down and immediately started chatting with me about my day, my life, where I'm from. I answered briefly and asked what they wanted to order. The man looked offended and said, "Wow, straight to business, huh? No customer service here?" I told him I was there to take his order, not to become his friend. He asked for the manager and complained that I was dismissive and rude. The manager explained that we don't do fake friendly small talk here. We're polite and efficient. The man insisted that without hospitality and warmth, the restaurant was failing at basic service. He couldn't grasp that not everyone wants to pretend they care about a stranger's weekend plans. It's just to sell them pasta. My cousin works at a butcher shop in Delft, and an American asked if the pork chops were good. My cousin said they're fine, but the ones from last week's delivery were better. These are a bit lean. The American looked stunned and asked why he'd recommend something that wasn't the best. My cousin explained he wasn't recommending anything. He was answering the question honestly. The American left without buying and told his expat group that Dutch shopkeepers sabotage their own sales and don't understand business. He'd wanted my cousin to enthusiastically oversell the product regardless of its actual quality. He thought honest assessment was somehow bad service. I work at a bakery in Groningen, and an American woman bought a loaf of bread and asked if I thought it would be good for sandwiches. I said, "It's too dense for that. You'd want the lighter one on the left." She stared at me and said, "So why would you even sell this one if it's not good?" I explained, "It's excellent for toast and soup, just not ideal for sandwiches." She accused me of talking down the products and said in America, employees are trained to say everything is great. I told her I'd rather she buy the right bread and come back than buy the wrong one and waste her money. She said that was the weirdest sales pitch she'd ever heard and bought nothing. My neighbor runs a cafe in Maastricht. An American ordered a coffee and asked if the pastries were fresh. My neighbor said the croissants are from this morning, but the muffins are from yesterday, so they're a bit dry. The American complained to the health department that the cafe was selling stale food and lying to customers. The inspector came, found nothing wrong, and explained that my neighbor had been transparent about the product freshness. The American had expected my neighbor to either lie and say everything was fresh, or to throw out die-old muffins, or at minimum to never admit any product was less than perfect. She couldn't process the idea that a business owner would voluntarily tell a customer something might not be at peak quality. I worked the ticket counter at Schiphol Airport, and an American asked which gate his connection was at. I checked and said, "You've missed it. It left 20 minutes ago. You'll need to rebook." He insisted I was wrong because his phone said he had time. I showed him the departure board. He got angry and said I was being negative instead of problem solving. I told him the problem was that he'd missed his flight and the solution was rebooking. He demanded I take ownership of his mistake and find him another flight for free because I'd made him feel bad about missing it. I'd given him factual information. He wanted me to apologize for reality. My brother drives a taxi in Rotterdam, and he picked up an American couple going to a hotel. The woman asked if the route was scenic. He said, "No, it's just highways and industrial areas. There's nothing to look at." She got offended and said he should try to make the experience pleasant instead of being so negative. He told her he was being accurate so she didn't spend the whole ride expecting scenery that wasn't there. She said American drivers would have told her about the hidden beauty or pointed out something interesting anyway. She wanted him to fabricate a narrative instead of preparing her. For a boring 20-minute drive on the A20, I'm a tour guide in Bruges. And an American on my walking tour asked if the city was the most romantic in Europe. I said, "That's subjective, but it's very touristy and crowded most of the year, which ruins the atmosphere." She told the group I was talking down my own city and the worst promoter she'd ever met. I explained I live here, and I'm telling the truth about what it's actually like. She said a good guide would sell the dream regardless of reality. She'd paid for a tour, not a tourism board advertisement. But she couldn't separate honest local perspective from personal insult. My sister works at a train information desk in Arnhem, and an American asked if the train to Brussels was comfortable. She said, "It's a regular train. The seats are fine, but not luxurious. It gets crowded during peak hours." Complained to her supervisor that she'd undersold the experience and discouraged travel. Supervisor backed her up completely because she'd given an accurate description. The American argued that employees should create excitement about services, not list drawbacks. He'd asked a question about comfort levels. She'd answered with useful information. He'd wanted marketing language and hype. "I work at a bike rental shop in Amsterdam, and an American asked if biking here was easy. I said if you're not used to bike lanes and traffic, you'll probably struggle for the first few days and might get hit." He laughed and said, "I was joking." I told him I was serious and showed him the route map with the dangerous intersections marked. He got defensive and insisted I was trying to scare tourists away from renting bikes. I explained I'd rather he know the risks than get injured and blame us. He accused me of liability paranoia and said American rental shops would have just said it's super easy and fun. He rented the bike. Came back 3 hours later with a scraped elbow from falling at a tram crossing and admitted I'd been right, but was still annoyed I'd killed his confidence. I'm a customer service agent for a Dutch airline, and an American called about a delayed flight. I told him, "Your flight's delayed 3 hours due to weather. Nothing we can do. You can rebook or wait." He asked why I wasn't apologizing or offering compensation. I said because the weather wasn't our fault and the policy doesn't cover weather delays. He said I had the worst attitude he'd ever encountered and that I clearly hated my job. I don't hate my job. I just don't perform emotional labor for situations outside anyone's control. Here's what Americans need to understand. We're not being mean. We're being honest. We don't sugarcoat. We don't lie to protect feelings, and we don't waste time on fake politeness. When you ask us a question, we give you the real answer. When something's wrong, we tell you it's wrong. That's not cruelty, that's respect. We treat you like an adult who can handle the truth. But Americans are so used to everyone lying to them with a smile that when they finally meet people who tell it straight, they think they're being attacked. The problem isn't Dutch honesty. The problem is Americans can't handle living in a world where people say what they actually mean.